we are. Oh, my ad block's been updated. That's cool. This is some Captain Tsubasa music. Pause it. Here we go. Just to make sure y'all can hear me. That was Captain Tsubasa, a recommendation from one of our viewers last time on Twitch. As you can see, maybe not. I've got a cat here. My name's Wesley, and this is Signum Academy. A cat. Let me get it. Let's take that away. Enough of that. Cat can stay, but the background, gone. All right. Oh, there you go. Captain Tsubasa. That was the Japan Cup enemy theme from Captain Tsubasa, Super Striker on NES. Oh, the sequel. Correct that. So thanks for that recommendation, whoever threw that out last time. We are here on Twitch, streaming on a few other places if the restream is working properly, which I think it is. Yeah, it definitely is. If you want to chat with me, it's easiest if you're on Twitch, and I will try to keep an eye on that. Let's find our Mother 3 playthrough. I wonder if there's a good one from our same sources last time. Because a lot of these people, they'll be talking through the whole thing, and obviously that's what I'm here to do. So let's try to find one. Oh, Nintendo Complete. Yeah, this is who we watched last time. Let's go with it. Oh, wow. So they give you the full experience here of playing on Game Boy Advance. The Mother 3 fan translation. Version 1.2. Shigesato Itoi, you may recall his name. And Brownie Brown, his company, along with HAL Laboratory. Looks like we need to start a new game. I'll pause it here. I think you get the gist. The opening of this game included a disclaimer that it's a fan translation. The game was never released officially in any version except the Japanese original. And that's why it retains the name Mother 3 instead of being called EarthBound 2 or something like that. Of course, EarthBound itself was a sequel to the original Mother game, and thus in Japan is known as Mother 2. That's why we get Mother 3. If you notice, the game doesn't come out until 2006, which is over a decade after the original, rather, the sequel, that is EarthBound, the game that we all were able to play in the US. There was originally a plan to have a, let's see if we can find it here. There's a lot of videos about this if you go searching for it. There you go. Why Mother 3 is not released in English. There's one. And there's also some about the version of this game that was going to be released. I don't want to go too far down in the comments because who knows what's going to pop up there. But for a long time, the expectation was that Itoi, the creator, would be releasing a third game, given the popularity of the series, and that it would come out on the then new console, the N64, the Nintendo 64. And there are versions of this. If you go searching for them, you can see some of the material that they had developed for that original N64 version of the game. It's not great. but there is a sort of record of it that can be traced. What eventually happens is that, as you see, the game comes out for Game Boy Advance, a handheld system, and it's much later, um, as I said, about a decade on. So people who played the original game as kids are well into their adolescence, if not into their young adulthood. Um, and frankly, by the time this game came out, I personally was not really that interested in playing it. Um, but here we are. Uh, Many years later, I don't know if it's probably about 20 years now, but at any rate, with a whole lot of hindsight looking back now, I can say this is a game that's worth playing. I did finally go back and play it all the way through here, just this past year. Um, I don't know if you might have had an experience like this where you play a game or you read a book as a kid, um, and then years later, however many years that might be for you, you go back and give it another try, and you find something pretty different than what you remembered. Um, as I've said about some of the other things we've read and discussed in here, I feel like that's a good sign that what you're dealing with is a classic, in whatever you want to take that to mean, but a good game, a good book, one that's worth rereading, replaying. Um, so some of the differences that you'll notice in Mother 3, other than the fact that it's on a totally different system and it's many years after the game it's supposedly the sequel to. Um, this time around, instead of having one playable character, Ness in EarthBound or Ninten in the previous game, we have a wide variety, um, and they're introduced gradually throughout the game. So in this initial sequence where we're naming our characters, there's the twins, Lucas and Klaus, um, but also their parents and some of the things that we would expect from this game. The dog, the favorite thing, the favorite food. All of that sets you up to expect that the game is going to be really similar to EarthBound. And in the first hour or so of the game, you're probably not too surprised in that regard. Um, let's take a look at the actual gameplay here. So jumping ahead a bit. I'll make this bigger so we can see it a bit easier. So very defined gender roles as per the genre that we're working within. The kid goes on his adventure, waking up late, classic protagonist behavior, chasing chickens around the yard. We know what we're dealing with here. All cows, no matter what they're thinking, go. Pig and his partner. The story is a series of memories. Memories are remembered with other memories and in turn become memories themselves. If you don't take care to preserve your memories, you'll forget them. So please tell us, frogs, your memories of everything so far. This is what people refer to as saving. Save your game. So there's your save screen. Rather than calling home to your dad, or rather calling your dad at work, wherever he is, you talk to frogs to save the game. That's a little weird. Here we go. Difference between the brothers immediately apparent, because whereas Lucas is a sleepyhead, kind of gentle, Klaus is adventurous, play fighting with the Dragos. I should play too. Say no, but he'll insist. Here comes Grandpa to show us how to ram into things. Imagine a thing called a B button. Hold the B button for a second and let go. This will let you dash. Using the dash ability, you can ram into the Drago. So notice we're play fighting, not in a real battle. We have an additional ability in this game, which is to, quote, dash. Leave the Drago. Friendly neighborhood of Dragos here. I do want you to go ahead and see the combat screen though. Your weakling. There's Mole Cricket. Alright, here we go. Battle tutorial. Can't just sit idly by when I hear someone's play fight. I'm gonna wipe the floor with all of you. So some of these basically exactly like what we've expected from this game. There was something weird happening there too though, wasn't there? 2 attacks for the price of 1. So they're getting combo attacks. Huh, interesting. You won. So a lot of this game, again, playing on some of our expectations right out of the gate. I don't know if there's any questions or comments yet. All right. Now, it appears that there was initially going to be some sort of mechanic in this game that would allow this play fighting kind of idea to carry through more of the game so that battles are not won by defeating the opponent with strength and violence, but instead you're able to play or in some way tame enemies that you meet. Um, Enemies that seem scary, foes like dragons or dragos, could actually turn out to be friends. That mechanic is largely disappeared from the final version of the game. And we see it just in little bits and pieces here and there. Now there's some threads that we could pull out of that, I think, because a really similar idea does come into Undertale, which comes out around the same time as Mother 3. So it's in that same genre again, but playing on those ideas in some interesting ways. So if you're looking for something that's a little less violent, Undertale is a great option. One that's very, very influenced by EarthBound and the EarthBound series. Um, and I think that we'll talk about that next year once we get into a new round of video games and new themes and things. But focusing on sort of the origins of the JRPG. So it bears mentioning here too that this game seems to be playing on some of the sources of the genre in Dragon Quest. And we mentioned this just a little bit. Dragon Quest, called Dragon Warrior in the versions that are released in the United States, at least some of the earlier games. Those games all revolve around the idea of a dragon lord or someone who commands the power of the dragons. Pretty cool idea. Obviously, the dragon is a really interesting creature in terms of mythology and some of the ways that we could understand that working. Um, but for the purposes of the game, it looks really cool. Those games have art by the same creator of the Dragon Ball series, Akira Toriyama. They're quite distinctive. You know, they're very stylish. And those games are wildly popular in Japan, although slightly less so in the US. Uh, of course, Final Fantasy games gradually do gain popularity, and with them, the Dragon Quest games. But even now, they're not in the real mainstream of that genre, that Japanese role-playing games. Um, if you're interested in this sort of thing, again, there are some really great resources out there. Um, but for our purposes, what I did want to focus on here was some of that mythological connection. So EarthBound is really keen on taking on board all those same sources, right? The idea of the hero going on an adventure, uh, the family being core to that, and the mom and the dad having their roles in the game. Um, but now really changing up that recipe that we've come to expect, right? Changing up the combat system here to this idea of play fighting, and also, as you saw, the idea of being able to dash into enemies or use combo attacks, multiple hits in the same sequence. Doing that actually, we'll learn a little later, um, by a kind of rhythm of tapping on those buttons along with the music of the battle. So each battle has a distinctive beat or tempo, and tapping along with it in a different rhythm will help you get those combo attacks to work. Um, so they're kind of changing that up, and having the dragons appear in this form of friends rather than foes, I think sets the stage for a pretty interesting little variation on the theme. Um, Now this gets quite a bit heavier pretty quickly. So let's skip ahead a bit. Without giving too much away, we're going to head home, and then we're going to take on the role of the kid's father, Flint. He's going out looking for his kids. Here he is. So every individual in town and around town has a name and a personality. The names are not the most creative. We have Lighter and Fuel stuck in the forest. Again, playing on the idea of the button itself and exhausting all of our non-playable characters. So here's a temple. It says, hey, wait up, you gotta go in the temple. Oh, sorry, the sanctuary to the forest gods. And so let's go ahead in. There's our dragons again. A light dragon and a dark dragon. We have to tell the name of the person playing the game. I wonder what they're going to name themselves. If it's Alex again. It appears to be Alex. Thank goodness for Alex recording all this gameplay. Alright, so the game wants to know the name of the player. Sorry. And we're supposed to forget that ever happened. Skip ahead, skip ahead, skip ahead. Here we are in the forest. Smoky. A lot of cookies and other items. A little bit of battle. Now Flint, of course, wielding a stick is a little bit stronger than his kids. Quite a bit stronger. But oddly, his companion here doesn't actually appear in the battle at all. In that way, he's a lot like Pokey from the first game. He's tagging along. I think his name's Thomas this time, but he doesn't actually participate in the fights. Alright. So again, checking on our friends, but we got to take time out to enjoy the hot springs, of course. Sparrow's advice lets you know that you can dash right past enemies, but later on when you have to fight, might be a problem. The hot springs, like the frogs, like the sparrows, appear everywhere throughout this game. They're a component that comes back in a big way from EarthBound, where they're just a couple in the whole game. That's a bit of a cultural thing. So there certainly are elements of this game that make it difficult to translate or bring over and localize for a US audience. Again, there's videos down there that talk about that. I don't know why I keep scrolling down. I need to just skip ahead. So, into the forest. The forest on fire. And this is quite an upgrade from EarthBound's graphics, I think, in a lot of ways. Yam monster. Sounds delicious. So we can avoid battles, but we're choosing to fight some in order to gain experience very wisely. Just some of these little details, the flames, of course, in the trees, but then also these sparks flying around. The time it takes, though, to get some of this dialogue across is a little bit tedious early in the game here. All these little gestures and things that the characters are doing to convey some of the drama of the situation, maybe, but also just to show off again a little bit of the storytelling aspirations of this game. So, picking up that item. Gotta equip that lumber as a weapon. And now we're gonna have to fight some of these enemies. I think it's at this point that you should notice you have some special abilities. They're gonna come in really handy here. Alright. And thank goodness we have so many healing items. So Thomas is going to go ahead and hang out with Flint. You've got to rescue the kid from the burning house. Let's go on. Go. And I think this is the first indication that there are some enemies, creatures in this game who've been genetically modified in some way. A flying mouse. So kind of like a comical version of a dragon, right? A being, in this case a mouse, shouldn't really fly but has wings. Pretty difficult battle if you haven't been fighting up to this point. But no great danger if you have. So we'll take care of that flying mouse. We'll rescue the kid from the burning house. There we go. There you go. Again, some classic hero behavior here. Saving the defenseless. Just in time, the house is going to collapse, burn down. All right. And so again, there's this combination here. Covered in soot, but alive. Pitch black too. This combination of the expected and the unexpected, right? Now, as this first opening sequence of the game plays out, we're going to see some very interesting changes to this formula. I think that, again, not to spoil the game for anybody who's playing along. I'm going to leave that for now, uh, but I think you'll figure out pretty quickly whether this game is for you. If you play the first hour or two, you'll get a sense of some of what's at stake here. Um, so for anybody playing along, you can find this translation and emulate it for free. Um, the legality of that is a little dubious, so I'm not going to sit here and explain exactly how, but it's reasonably easy if you do a little bit of searching on your own. The localization has never been challenged by Nintendo. There's a kind of tacit or unspoken acceptance of this translation, and it's done by people who are very, very active in that um, Starmen community, that fan community for Earthbound. Um, the main author, has a whole book about the Earthbound translations. Actually, I think we looked at it before. Um, Very respected, semi-professional, semi-official. We'll say that's what I'm looking for. Semi-official in that it's never been challenged by Nintendo and thus sort of accepted. Um, on the other hand, Nintendo has been known to be pretty sort of severe about any emulators. And so the translation itself is not an emulator. You're going to have to find your emulator somewhere else and your emulated version of the game, the ROM or the actual game file. But once you do, the translation patch will plug in and work on it and allow you to play in English. Um, the next part of the game involves a lot of jumping around from character to character and even from time period to time period. So it can be a little confusing what's going on. We'll talk about that next time. We'll talk about the mid portion of the game, really. And so play as much as you are able in the next couple weeks if you're playing along. I will spoil some things next time for those who haven't played through the first couple hours of the game. But hopefully by then you'll have a chance to do that if you're interested in experiencing it for yourself. And it is worth it. It's quite powerful, as I said. Um, as long as you go into this game knowing that it's its own thing, and it's certainly not the Earthbound clone that it kind of appears at first, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think you'll find Mother 3 quite excellent, actually. So for next time, um, we will discuss the first couple hours in some more detail and then jump into the mid portion of the game. We're only going to spend like 3 or 4 classes on this one, so we're going to be going through at a faster clip going forward. Um, that's because the end of the year is approaching, and I do have another class that will be starting up, hopefully, if enough people sign up, and it will run in in space. That is the Signum University program for adult continuing education. I believe I got that right. So, um, video game studies will return in some form, but we're wrapping up our series on Earthbound. And so I'll see you all on Twitch for just a few more episodes here, and then I'll let you know what we'll be doing going forward into next year. Certainly hoping that enough folks out there do sign up for the space module on video game studies so that that can run as well. Um, well, if there's no more comments, questions in the chat, I'll let you all go. Thanks for joining. See you next time in a couple weeks.